audio was off. Oh my God. Hi guys. I'm sorry my audio was off. Um, I hope you guys can hear me now. Um, my name is Heena and I am an author, a developmental editor, and a writing coach. And I'm also a publishing consultant. And I founded Verbatic Media in order to help authors especially in India, in publishing their novels and in editing their novels and in sharing their novels with the readers. So, let me tell you quickly about my two published works, Deceived and The Manor. I hope my window is not coming in your way. Okay. So, Deceived is a psychological thriller. It's a fast-paced suspense novel. It has multiple point of views, which is our today's topic. It has three point of views, and it has a fourth one as well, but it is epistolary in nature, which are the diary entries of a psychopath, one of my main characters. So do check out Deceived. I have finally been able to sort out the issue with Amazon. There was a major ASIN issue going on with Amazon and the series of ISBNs that I had received from ISBN India, and there was a major issue going on. And because of that, I had hired someone to help me list my book on Amazon, the physical copies, but it was not happening because of the ASIN problem. And so that guy advised me to delete my KDP account. So I had to delete it. And my books just went off from there, from Amazon entirely. Now, again, then I had to correct the ISBN and the ASIN issue is not yet resolved. So I've decided to just go ahead with the KDP account. So at least the ebooks are available, and then have the paperbacks also available via KDP. Uh, so basically, they'll be coming from US now because they do not yet have KDP India. So it's a bit of a process, but still, on the other hand, I'm still working on getting the ASIN sorted out. So hopefully, it'll get sorted out quickly, sooner than I think. But let's see. Anyway, back to the point. So you can now book your copies of The Manor and Deceived on Amazon again, at least the ebooks. And the good news is Deceived and The Manor are available on KDP Select. So, oh, sorry, KDP Select, Kindle Select. Okay, I'm forgetting the name. Prime Select. Okay, so whatever their program is. So it's available there. So basically, if you have a Prime membership, Kindle Prime membership, so you can read the books for free. If you read the book and like them, do not read the books. Do not forget to leave a review for my book because my old reviews are all gone now. So please, please, please leave a review for my books so that others can also find them if it aligns with their tastes. Okay, so the other book is The Manor. It's a gothic horror novella. It's based on the Indian folklore, and it is very slow burn and creeping horror kind of a read. It has lyrical prose and it has a supernatural entity, and it is heavily symbolic. So if you like gothic fiction, then do check out my books. I just realized that I have not been sharing any window here. Oh my God. Okay. So, see, today was not a very good day because I was actually thinking of canceling the live earlier, but then I decided to do it at 5 in the evening. And now I'm looking at my YouTube and realizing that, okay, Anyway, I'm sharing the screen now, so hopefully you are able to see it now. See, this is what I was talking about. Okay. Now let me tell you something about the art of storytelling before we move forward. Art of storytelling is coming out next year, and it is a step-by-step guide on writing a novel. It has some absolutely amazing things. It'll help you identify your story's core. It'll help you from the process of ideation to completing your manuscript draft by draft. Then it has my patented 5D character framework. Then there is the veins system of simplifying story development. And then there's the story architecture section where we'll be learning about conflict beats, pacing, and structure. And then there is a section on discovering your authentic voice, how to weave themes and emotions together, and how to become a complete author, because I'll be sharing stuff about publishing books in India as well. Both the ways, traditional as well as self-publishing. So do check out my novel. You can pre-book the book on my website, verbaticmedia.com, or you can pre-book it from Amazon. The Amazon link will be going live sometime by Monday, so I'll be sharing that link in the description, or I'll share it in the pinned comment, so you can do it from there. If you're going to do it from Amazon, you'll have to pay for it now, but if you're going to pre-book it with me from Verbatic Media, then you won't have to pay anything right now, and you'll be getting at least a 50% discount on the book. Also, if you book it from me directly from Verbatic Media, you'll get a chance to enter the giveaway, in which you might get a physical copy of the book free of cost. So it's a very limited opportunity. So do not forget to pre-book a copy of The Art of Storytelling as soon as you can. Now, let us move on to, I'm just making sure that you guys are able to see my screen, because I have the entire presentation ready, and it would be a shame if you won't be doing, if you won't be watching it. Just a second, I think my screen is not being shared again. Oh my God. Again? Why is this happening? I absolutely have no idea. Okay. Okay. So I think my screen is visible now. Perfect. So, again, welcome to Writing Fundamental series. If you've been following along, you already know that we've been slowly building the foundation of strong storytelling. From understanding your story's anatomy to creating unforgettable characters, developing solid conflict, mastering your story's beats, and finally, last week, building worlds that feel alive and real. Today, we move to something equally important, something that determines how your reader experiences your story. That is the POV, or point of view and voice. Now, let me give you a very quick recap of what we've seen so far. In Anatomy of a Story, we explored what really makes a story work. In Building Memorable Characters, we looked at how to make readers care for your characters. Then, in Conflict, Story Beats, and Archetypes, we understood how to keep readers hooked. In world building, we saw how to make our stories feel real. And now comes the lens through which all of these elements are experienced by the reader. That is the point of view and voice. Because even if you have the richest world, the strongest plot, and the most compelling characters, if your point of view is off, or your voice isn't distinct or original, the story will feel flat, like it's wearing someone else's skin. And we obviously don't want that. So, today we'll start by understanding what point of view means. Then we'll look at the different types of point of views, how to choose the right one for your story, and what's called narrative distance, the invisible gap between your reader and your character's mind. Then we'll dive into voice, that is your story's personality. And finally, how the two work together to create emotion and authenticity. By the end of this live, you will know exactly how to decide whose eyes your story should be told through and how to make your writing sound unmistakably like you. And yes, as always, I have a free resource for you at the end, the POV and Voice Workbook, to help you put all this into practice. So, let's begin. What is point of view? Point of view is the position from which a story is told. The eyes, the mind, and the emotions through which the reader experiences your story and world. It's the storyteller's lens that decides who sees, what's seen, and how much the reader knows. Point of view determines the distance between the reader and the story, whether they stand outside watching or live inside the character's skin. It's not just about the pronouns like I, he, she, as a lot of writers think. It's about whose eyes we are seeing through, whose mind we are living in, and how close or far we are from their emotions. In other words, POV is the camera of your story. It decides what we see, what we don't, and how deeply we feel. If you change the point of view, you change the story. Not the plot, mind you, but the experience of it. Now, before we move forward, let's look at the importance of point of view. Point of view defines the reader's relationship with your story. It decides how much the reader knows, how close they feel to your characters, and even what emotions they experience. You can tell the same story through 10 different point of views, and each one will sound like an entirely different book. For example, take The Lord of the Rings. If we told it through Frodo's eyes, it's a personal story about burden, courage, and fear. Through Gandalf's eyes, it becomes a story about wisdom and destiny. And through Gollum's eyes, it becomes a tragedy, a descent into obsession, maybe Gollum's catabasis. It's the same world and the same events, but a different, completely different emotional core. All because of whose eyes we are looking through. So here's the simplest way to understand it. Point of view equates to who sees plus who tells the story. Sometimes the one who sees the story and the one who tells the story are the same people, like in first person point of view. Other times, the storyteller is an unseen narrator showing us what a character experiences, like in third person. Imagine sitting around a campfire with three people. Each one tells the story of what happened that day the same event. One is emotional, one is detached, and one is funny. You'd walk away with three completely different impressions. That's how POV affects your story. Just a second. When readers open a story, they subconsciously step into someone's shoes. If your POV is chosen well, they forget themselves and become the character. If it's inconsistent or confusing, they get thrown out of the story. That's why mastering POV is not a choice, but a necessity. Now, let us take some examples from famous books. Think of Harry Potter. We experience everything from Harry's limited third person point of view. We only know what he knows. We discover things as he discovers them. If Rowling had written the story from Dumbledore's point of view, the mystery of the Chamber of Secrets or the identity of Snape's loyalty would have been ruined completely. It's because of POV that we feel wonder and fear alongside Harry instead of observing him from above. Secondly, POV is important because it shapes the story's questions. Here's what most writers misunderstand. Your POV doesn't just control what the reader knows, it controls what questions they ask. If you tell a murder mystery, I'm actually not so sure if. Is my Zoom not showing? Just give me 1 minute, please. Okay, yes, so I had to go and check if my connection was okay because I was not able to see. Anyway, so we were on the second. Now my screen's again not sharing. Perfect. It's sharing now. Okay, so we were on the second importance of Why point of views are important. So, point of views are important because they shape the story's questions. And here's what most writers misunderstand: your POV doesn't just control what the reader knows, it controls what questions they ask. And as we have already seen in the earlier lives, questions are very important because they are basically the conflicts. They are that makes the readers curious about your story. So until and unless your readers are asking questions about your story, what is going to happen? How is he going to deal with it? Or how is she going to deal with this problem? They are not invested enough in your story. So, if you tell a murder mystery from the POV of a detective, the question becomes who did it? If you tell the same story from the killer's point of view, it becomes will I be caught? And how? If you tell it from the victim's spouse's point of view, it becomes can I bear the truth? Same plot, but different tension because it has different emotional core. So, every time you're choosing your point of view, you're also choosing the emotional core of your story. Now that we've looked at the importance of POV, let's look at the different types of point of views and what each one can do for your story. We'll break down the most common ones: first person, second person, third person, limited, omniscient, and objective, with clear examples that you'll instantly recognize. So let us look at the types of point of views. There are five main types of point of views. Each one creates a different kind of intimacy. Think of them as different camera setups. Each one frames your story in a different way. Let us look at the first point of view, that is the first person point of view. First person is when the narrator uses I, me, my. The story is told directly through the character's eyes. What they see, think, and feel. It's the most intimate form of storytelling because the reader isn't just observing, they're living inside the character's head. For example, I couldn't breathe. The forest was so still that even the wind seemed afraid to move. I knew someone or something was watching me. This line instantly places us inside the narrator's fear. We don't see her being afraid, we feel it. Now, there are a couple of disadvantages and advantages to this point of view. Let's look at the advantages. It is deeply emotional. It creates a deep emotional connection and immediacy. It is great for unreliable narrators or personal stories. It is perfect for coming of age thrillers or introspective fiction. The disadvantages are limited knowledge. Readers only know what the character knows. It can get a little claustrophobic if not done properly, or even biased. And it risks of and there's a risk of too much introspection if not balanced properly. Let us look at three examples that use a first person point of view. The Hunger Games, Katniss's inner struggle. The Catcher in the Rye shows Holden's rebellious tone. And in The Gone Girl, there are two alternating first person narratives showing two different truths, two different emotional cores. If you want readers to experience raw emotion or personal transformation, first person is your go to POV. Now, second person POV. Second person is the rarest. POV that is used in writing because it uses the pronoun you. It directly places the reader inside the story as if they are the protagonist. For example, you open the door and step into the fog. You tell yourself you're not afraid, but your hands tremble anyway. Immediately, the reader becomes you. It's extremely immersive, but it can be a little too intense. The advantages of second person point of view are the powerful immediacy of scenes. It feels exceptionally cinematic. Secondly, it is perfect for experimental writing or whenever you want to break the fourth wall. The disadvantages of second person POV is that it is hard to sustain over a full length novel. And second, it can alienate readers if not done carefully. The best example in literature of second person POV is Bright Lights Big City by J. McHenry. Mc, McNerney. I always confuse his name. Okay. Anyway, so that's a very good example. Another example is If on a Winter's Night, a Traveler by Italo Calvino. There's another example of second person point of view, and that is You by Carolyn Kepnes, if I'm not wrong. Even if you might not have heard of the book, you might have heard of the series. Penn Badgley is the hero, and it is an amazing series. If you haven't yet watched it, do check out. The first two seasons are insanely good. Anyway, remember, use second person POV when you want your reader to live the story and not just read it. If used brilliantly in short fiction or games, such as choose your own adventure kind of interactive fiction, it will work wonderfully. Then there comes third person point of view. Third person, today we are going to talk about third person limited point of view first. Third person limited is the most common POV in modern fiction. It uses he, she, they, but stays close to one character's inner world. For example, she pressed her ear to the door. Her heart thudded so loudly she was sure they'd hear it. Any second now, they'd find her. Notice we are not told what everyone else feels, only what she feels. We see the world filtered through her emotions and perceptions. There are three advantages of third person limited POV. First, there's a balance between intimacy and flexibility. Secondly, it lets you show emotion as well as action. And third, it keeps the suspense alive, as readers only know what one character knows. The disadvantages of third person limited POV are there's a risk of head hopping, slipping into other characters' thoughts, which is something that I've seen so many times now while editing novels. And secondly, uh, it must maintain consistent internal access to one character per scene. So, in one scene, you cannot be going over another character's thoughts or feelings. More on this later on in the common mistakes. But for now, just keep this in mind. A very good example is Harry Potter, which is third person limited through Harry's eyes. We never see what Dumbledore is planning. We learn it when Harry does. And then there is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. It has deep immersion into Patroclus's perspective. Remember, in third person limited POV, you can still go deep. You can write as if you are inside the character's skin. That is called deep POV, and we'll explore it soon. Now, let's look at the fourth POV, third person omniscient point of view. Omniscient means all knowing. It means that in the story, the narrator knows everything about everyone: thoughts, emotions, backstories, even the future. For example, Frodo did not yet know that far away in a dark tower, the eye had already turned its gaze upon him. This is pure Tolkien, a godlike narrator who moves across minds, lands, and time. So, as you can see, it is excellent for epic fantasy and fiction. There are obviously advantages and disadvantages to third person omniscient narration, POV. Uh, it has an epic scope, so it's perfect for large worlds and ensemble casts. Then it allows commentary and reflection. It offers readers a bird's eye view of events in your vast world. That's why it's good. The disadvantages are it creates emotional distance from characters. If done properly, you can still overcome this issue, but you have to be extremely prolific at writing in order to do so. Secondly, it is hard to maintain intimacy and focus in third person omniscient POV. And third, there's a risk of over explaining or losing the momentum. The examples obviously include The Lord of the Rings, that has a sweeping, omniscient view of Middle Earth. Then there's Pride and Prejudice, that is told by Austen's witty narrator who comments on society. Then we have Good Omens, that has a humorous, all knowing voice guiding the chaos. Remember, omniscient POV works beautifully for epics, classics, and satires, where the voice itself becomes a part of the experience. Now, let's look at the fifth and the last POV, that is objective or cinematic POV. Objective or cinematic POV shows only what an external camera would capture. That means no inner thoughts or emotions. Readers see, hear, and interpret, but the narrator never tells them what's going on inside the characters' heads. For example, John placed the glass on the table. His hand shook slightly. Across the room, Mary turned away. Notice we infer tension here, but it's never stated. Now, obviously, there are again advantages and disadvantages to this point of view. Objective point of view creates mystery and realism, and it is excellent for thrillers and screenwriting. But it is very limited emotional, it has very limited emotional connection. So you cannot expect your readers to connect in this POV immediately. You'll again have to be an exceptional writer in order to achieve that. I'm sorry, one of my cats is running around and creating a ruckus behind me. Anyway, so it's done. So, secondly, it is hard to sustain without subtle physical cues, because if you are just observing things as an objective narrator, then what else are you going to do? You'll have to use a lot of physical cues. And again, then it comes to practice. If you're comfortable with it, I don't think uh, anyone's natural inclination is to write in objective POV unless you're a screenwriter. So I would suggest that you can use it for experimental writing, but not don't try to intentionally incorporate it into your writing, if especially if you are writing your first book or if you are extremely new to writing. uh Example is Hemingway's Hills Like White Elephants, something that I used to share a lot with my students earlier. And many screenplays actually use this approach by default. So you will actually have a very hard time finding a lot of books in this POV. But in case if you are planning to use it, then you'll have to do your due research. Remember, use objective or cinematic POV when you want the reader to read between the lines. Now, let's recap the point of views using a metaphor. If storytelling were filmmaking, first person POV will be your GoPro on the character's head. Second person POV will be the VR mode, where the reader becomes the character. Third person limited POV will be the shoulder cam, following one person closely, but from outside. Third person omniscient will be a drone shot, seeing everything. And objective POV or cinematic POV will be the surveillance camera, showing without judging. Each one works, but the question is which lens best captures your story's intent. So before you start your next story or revise your current one, ask yourself whose truth or intent are you trying to tell in your story? That answer will show you which POV to use. Now, let's talk about something very important and something very less writers talk about or know about: narrative distance. Oh, sorry, narrative distance. Now that we understand the types of POV, let's look at something a little more subtle but extremely powerful: narrative distance. Think of it as how close or far your reader feels from your character's mind. Even within the same POV, especially third person, you can have different levels of closeness. It's like zooming a camera in and out. Sometimes you're right inside the character's head, other times you're watching them from across the room. Narrative distance decides whether the reader is an observer or a participant. Let me show you with an example. If we are to keep some distance between the reader and the character, which is also known as deep POV, we'll get to it in just 1 minute. Uh, Listen to the example, okay? She saw the door creak open. A chill ran down her spine as she realized someone was outside. Here, we are watching her, the character, from outside. We are told she saw and realized. Again, I'll repeat it. She saw the door creak open. A chill ran down her spine as she realized someone was outside. If we are to keep if we are to close that distance between the reader and the character, which is known as close or DPOV. Again, we'll get to it in a second. We'll be framing the sentence something like this. The door creaked open. Cold air slipped in, brushing her bare arms. Someone was out there. Now we are inside the character's head. We are not told she is scared, we feel it. That's the effect of narrative distance. You don't report feelings, you evoke them. Now let's break this down further. At the farthest end, we have distant POV. Okay, 1 second, let me just change the slide. Where the narrator feels like an external observer. We see the character doing things, thinking things, but we don't experience them ourselves. At the closest end, we have deep POV, where the narrator disappears and we are living the moment as a character. I cannot tell you how many people, writers, they start writing using third person POV and they confuse deep and distant POVs, and sometimes they use deep POV and sometimes they use distant POV, and then I have such a hard time explaining them that the narrative distance cannot be changed mid scene. And this is a mistake that most third person POV writers make. If you've written a book in third person POV, especially if it's a long book, trust me, you might have made at least a dozen mistakes regarding deep POV and distant POV. And now, while revising, keep an eye out for this issue. Most modern fiction leans toward deep POV because we always say, show, don't tell. Why? Because it creates emotional immersion where the reader forgets that they're reading. Here's a scene in three versions. Notice how the distance shifts. First, distant POV. She knew the letter would destroy him. She hesitated, unsure whether to tell the truth. Now, second, medium POV. The letter would destroy him. Should she tell him? Her hands trembled as she unfolded it again. Third, deep POV. The words blurred. No, she couldn't tell him. Not this, not today. See how the narrator's voice disappears? In deep POV, we don't read she thought, she did, or she said. We are thinking it with her, or we are doing it with her. Now, let's look at the role of filter words. I'm just going to take 1 minute. It is a very important topic, and it is something that we always tell the authors not to use a lot of filler words. Filter words. So let us see what filter words are. One of the biggest barriers to deep POV is something called filter words. Words that remind the reader there's a narrator between them and the experience of the book, of the character. Some common filter words are saw, heard, felt, realized, wondered, thought, noticed, decided. These create distance. Use them too much, and you are going the far end on the distant POV's line. Instead of she felt the rain on her face, just write rain dripped down her face. Your reader will automatically feel it. Let's take an example from Harry Potter. In The Prisoner of Azkaban, Rowling often writes from Harry's limited but deep POV. Instead of saying, Harry saw the Dementor enter the train, she writes, A hand slid the compartment door open, and a tall cloaked figure glided inside. Notice how there are no filter words in the second example. We see what Harry sees as he sees it. That's why it's immersive. Remember, narrative distance doesn't just affect the emotion, it affects the tone. In A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin plays with variable distance throughout the series. When he writes Tyrion's chapters, we are inside his mind, which is full of wit and sarcasm. But when describing a battlefield, he pulls back, showing the grand scale like a camera drone shot. Shifting distance sorry, lets him control the pacing and the focus of the story. The point of view is intimate during emotional scenes and distant during chaotic scenes. And that is why he's able to capture both perfectly. Here's a tip on controlling distance. If you want your reader to feel, move closer. Deep POV. If you want them to understand, pull back. Distant POV. But do not go too distant with the distant POV. Close distance equates to emotion, intimacy, and tension, whereas far distance equates to clarity, description, and context. In order to use the narrative distance correctly, you need to practice the shifting of distance between the two, like adjusting the zoom on a camera lens. Here's an exercise for you. Take one paragraph from your story and rewrite it 3 times. First, as if you are far away, then medium close, and then deep inside your character's head. You'll feel how the emotional tone changes. Mango. Mango's crying. So far, we've understood the lens of storytelling, who's seeing, that is the POV, and how far or how close we are to them, that is the narrative distance. Now, let's talk about the sound of storytelling, the thing that makes your writing unmistakably yours, the voice. Now that we've talked about the lens of storytelling, let's talk about the sound. If POV decides what we see, then voice decides how we feel about it. Voice is what makes your writing recognizable. Two writers can describe the same scene, but their voices will make it sound completely different. Voice is your story's fingerprint, or say signature. And you'll completely lose it if you'll use GPT or other AIs to write your story. So don't do that. Voice is that invisible quality that makes you read one paragraph or maybe a couple of paragraphs and instantly know who wrote it, whether it's Tolkien, Martin, or Rowling. So, what exactly is voice? In simple terms, it's the personality of your writing, your rhythm, your tone, your word choice, and your worldview. It's not exactly what your characters say, it's how you, the storyteller, choose to tell their story. Now, there are 3 types of voice in storytelling. First is authorial voice. This is you, your natural way of seeing and interpreting the world. It shows in your phrasing, pacing, emotional tone, and the kind of stories you gravitate towards. For example, Tolkien's voice is formal, mythical, and lyrical. George R. R. Martin's voice is grounded, cynical, and brutally real. J.K. Rowling's voice is whimsical, warm, and lightly humorous. Now, when I talk about Tolkien, I'm talking about LOTR, of course, and Hobbit. When I'm talking about George R. R. Martin, I'm actually talking about A Song of Ice and Fire, but I just remembered that there's another book by George R. R. Martin that he has written in the same voice as Game of Thrones because it is kind of it's not exactly a part of the Song of Ice and Fire series, but it is based in the same land. The night something. It's the story of Egg Targaryen. So it is a beautiful story. I'm forgetting the name of the story, the book. But that is the voice that he's chosen for these two, the series and that book. But I have read another science fiction by George R. R. Martin. I'm so sorry, but actually, I read Game of Thrones, sorry, A Song of Ice and Fire books almost 10 years ago when they were not even a thing and no one was talking about them. So I read them then, and I was so taken by George R. R. Martin's writing that that time itself I'd read a couple of stories by him. So, and now I don't even remember the names because it's been almost 10 years. Anyway, so J.K. Rowling, you can. So obviously, here when I'm saying that her voice is whimsical and warm and humorous, I'm talking about the Harry Potter series. But she does use a very different tone in the book. Again, I'm forgetting the name. It's a big red and yellow book. Oh my God, I'm forgetting the name of the book. It's very famous. Actually, she has written one big Christmas book as well. That's has a very different tone than Harry Potter. Um, then, so an author can use different tones for different works. For example, I've used very dark and sinister kind of tone for Deceived, but I've used lyrical prose for The Manor. Both are mine, but very distinctively mine. So each of these voices could describe a forest, and we'd hear the difference very clearly. Tolkien's voice will be like the leaves whispered in ancient tongues of elves and forgotten kings. In Martin's voice, the woods were dark and full of men who'd kill for bread. And in Rowling's voice, a narrow path wound between tall trees that looked suspiciously alive. Here, sorry, here we are talking about the same forest and the trees, but in three very different moods. That's authorial voice. Now, let's look at the second type of voice, narrative voice. Narrative voice is the personality of your narrator, how the story is told on the page. Now, it might belong to the author. It can be same as the authorial voice if you yourself are using your voice for narration, or it might be a crafted narrator distinct from the author. The best example for this is Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. Even if you've just watched the series on Netflix, you'll understand this. If you haven't, then do just watch the first 15 minutes and you'll get what I'm talking about. The narrator's sardonic, self aware tone is the voice in the story. And then in Pride and Prejudice, we have Jane Austen's narrator, who is witty and observant, subtly judging the society Austen depicts. Narrative voice sets the tone. It can be playful, tragic, or ironic, or philosophical. It defines the reader's emotional entry point into your story. Then there's the third type of voice, that is character voice. As the name suggests, it is the voice of your character, how each character thinks, speaks, and perceives. It shows in their dialogue, inner thoughts, and even word choice when it comes to the narration, if it is from their POV, and dialogues and inner thoughts. Okay, I just repeated the line, right? Anyway. For example, a soldier, a poet, and a child will never describe the same sunset the same way. Let's see how they will describe the sunset. Soldier will say, visibility is dropping. We lose sight soon. We lose light soon. A poet will say, the sun bled into the sea, dying with dignity. And a child might say, the sky turned orange like orange candy. Here, all three voices tell you who's speaking without ever saying their name. Voice has a very strong connection to emotion. Voice is not just the style, it's emotion in disguise. It's how your readers feel your story before they even realize why. In The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's noble tone makes you feel reverence for Middle Earth. At the time when I was reading Lord of the Rings, again, it was almost 11 years ago, it I felt this amazing reverence. And at that time, I was not able to name that feeling. I just felt very different about the book. And now, when I look back as an author, as an editor, I know why. It was because of Tolkien's voice. You might have also felt this very intense feeling that you simply could not name. It was probably because of the voice. In The Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's Okay, sorry. In A Song of Ice and Fire, Martin's blunt, visceral style makes you feel the grime and corruption of the world. And likewise, in Harry Potter, Rowling's voice makes you believe in magic because she never mocks it or mocks wonder. She writes it with such sincerity. So, your voice determines how your story makes people feel hope, dread, nostalgia, or awe. If you've ever read Madeline Miller's book, you will see how the voice plays a very big role in how the readers feel the story. Here's the same scene, a girl standing before a haunted house, written in three different voices. Okay. Uh, let's go with lyrical like Tolkien. The wind wept through broken shutters, carrying whispers of an age too ancient to remember. Now let's use realistic voice like Martin. The house was a ruin. The stench of rot hit her first. Something alive had died there recently. And let's try the playful style or voice like Rowling. The house looked as if it had been daring children to knock on its door for 100 years, and nobody had taken up the challenge yet. Three entirely different experience just by changing the voice of the same scene. Now, let us look at how to find and improve your own voice. Writers often ask me, how do I find my voice? The answer is very simple. You never find your voice. You have to uncover it. It's already there, buried under imitation and fear of judgment. And the only way you can uncover it is by or writing. If you don't write, you're not going to uncover your voice. Your voice emerges when you stop writing to sound like someone else and simply go with your own emotional flow. Now, when a writer starts writing, they always try to imitate, even if it's subconsciously. And most of the time, it is subconsciously. You always try to write like the novels that you really love or the authors that you really are smitten by. And that's actually not a bad thing because that's how your brain thinks writing should be done because we are never taught writing. So it's okay. Right. When you write a lot, slowly, your own authorial voice will start emerging on the page. I mean, it's very difficult to explain, but the more you write, the more you're going to bring out your own voice. That is why I always tell writers do not use GPT or AI to write anything for you. You can use it for planning, of course. Why not? Because it's there, use it. Use it for planning, use it for structuring, maybe use it to develop an idea here or there, but never for writing. Never. Now, here's something that you can practice in order to improve your voice. Take a small scene, say maybe someone waiting for a bus, write it 3 times. One seriously, one sarcastically, and once as if you're writing a poem, very lyrical. The version that feels the most natural to you, that's the closest to your true voice. And that is how you can identify and uncover your voice. And in order to improve it, you simply have to write a lot. What I generally suggest my students and my authors is that they write at least 100 to 200 words every single day. It can be anything, anything at all. It can be a stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness is a great way of finding your authorial voice. So write that. Just take a paper or a pen and write. For a lot of people, typing works. So you can type if you're comfortable with it. I personally love writing with pen and paper on a paper. So I have a lot of notebooks in which I keep on writing. And just write about anything. If you are not able to write on random stuff, then I'll share a prompt sheet with you guys of ideas. Take one prompt every single day. Or if you are really not writing at all, then I would suggest taking one prompt for a week and working on a little piece for yourself. Maybe publish it on your blog, publish it on your social media, maybe in your story or Instagram. It's a good feeling to share your writing. I always love writing and then sharing it with everyone. But because I'm working on so many projects right now, I'm not able to write randomly like that. But I'm writing for my WIPs, that is works in progress, WIPs. So you can always do that. If you have a work in progress already, then you can write for that. 200 words every single day, because the only way you can improve your voice is by practice. Practice, practice, practice. Okay, so next we look at some of the most common mistakes writers make while dealing with POV and voice, and also how you can avoid them or fix them. We'll be covering 6 main mistakes, the commonest one. But The mistakes that you really don't even want to send your manuscript with to your editor. Now, these mistakes that we'll be discussing now are so common, you can even find them in published works. And these mistakes, trust me, take my word for it, they can instantly pull your reader out of the story. Like, instantly. Let's look at the first mistake, head hopping. If I had a rupee for every single time I've had to tell my authors, especially, my cats are just going crazy, especially the authors who are either writing in mythical fiction or science fiction or fantasy, head hopping is like littered across the entire manuscript, and it is one of the worst things because it really hampers the reading experience. So I'm so sorry. So head hopping, or what I also call as the POV whiplash, is the number one POV mistake I see. It happens when a writer slips in and out of multiple characters' thoughts in the same scene without any clear break or indication. For example, Meera glanced at Arjun and smiled. She hoped he'd understand what she meant. Arjun wondered why she looked so nervous and decided not to press further. Can you notice the mistake? On the surface, you won't be able to see it. But if we'll just look closer, we just jumped from Mira's mind into Arjun's in one paragraph. The readers like, wait, whose head am I in right now? Oh my god. You can't do that. You can't do that. And a lot of authors actually fail to see the mistake in this. See, if you want to go from Mira's POV into Arjun's POV, you have to wait for the scene to end. Then you can do the same instance, the same scene from another POV in the next after adding a scene break. That's how you hop the heads. Anyway, in order to fix it, you need to stay consistent with the POV. Meera glanced at Arjun and sorry, Meera glanced at Arjun and smiled, hoping he'd understand what she meant. But his face gave away nothing. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. See how we stay with Meera for the entire paragraph? We can't infer Arjun's thought through his actions instead of entering. Sorry, we can infer Arjun's thoughts through his actions instead of entering his mind, but we can't know for sure what he's thinking. Remember, if you need both sides of the emotional coin, separate them with a scene or a chapter break. A scene break is good, but a chapter break serves much better in this case. Now, the next mistake, inconsistent narrative distance. Another big mistake is inconsistent narrative distance. The writer starts deep in the character's emotions, then suddenly zooms out like a drone shot with no reason. For example, the knife gleamed in her hand. She had never felt such rage. It was as if anger was an emotion shared by all of humankind. That last sentence suddenly jumps out of our body and starts philosophizing. Readers feel that shift subconsciously. It's like an emotional whiplash. Don't do it. How are you going to fix this? The knife gleamed in her hand. She had never felt rage so sharp, like a pulse had turned into a weapon. Stay inside the character's body and mind, inside the moment. Don't hop here and there. The next mistake is breaking POV logic. Sometimes writers accidentally make their POV character see or know something they logically cannot. For example, Ria turned the corner. Behind her, Karan frowned, confused. If we are in Ria's POV, she can't see Karan frown behind her. You will not believe the number of times I've seen these mistakes in finished manuscripts. Manuscripts that authors actually thought were ready for publishing. Oh my god. That's literally like a broken camera angle. How do we fix it? Ria turned the corner. She didn't see Karan's frown or the confusion that followed her. Now, this also you can only do if your narrator is omniscient. If the narrator is limited third person and is talking about Ria, they will still not know that Karan was frowning. If you need to reveal both perspectives, use a scene cut or change the POV in the next section. Now, the next mistake, overusing filter words. And this is actually why I covered filter words in the first place. Remember our earlier discussion on filter words? Saw, heard, felt, realized, wondered, noticed, thought? They act like glass between you and the story. Okay, one of my cats just came here. Piku, 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 get away. I'm doing a live. Okay. Okay, she's here only. Okay. Filter words act like glass between your reader and the story. For example, she felt the cold wind brush her cheeks. How to fix this? Cold wind brushed her cheeks. Another example, he noticed the sky darkening over the horizon. Don't say that. Instead, write, the sky darkened over the horizon. Try not using filter words. Simple, direct, and immersive writing always speaks better to the reader. Remove the filter words and drop the reader right into the moment. If you are intentionally not wanting to do that, then do it only if you are really intentional about it. Otherwise, don't do it. Then, another big mistake is mixing author voice with character voice. This one's very deadly. Sometimes the author's intellectual or lyrical style overpass the character's authentic voice. So your teenager protagonist suddenly sounds like a 40-year-old philosopher, or your hardened soldier starts using poetic metaphors. For examples, life, he mused, is but a fragile web of choices and regrets. This is a 15-year-old street kid. He can't be talking like this. How he will be talking is, man, life's just a mess of bad choices, he muttered. See the difference? The second feels real to the character's voice and background. Remember, when writing in first person or deep third person, every line of narration should sound like something your character could actually think. And the last mistake is over polishing your voice in revisions. It is it is a less obvious one, but losing your unique voice while self revision is very common. When we over polish our prose, we sometimes scrub away what made it ours. You might edit out the humor, the quirk, the rhythm, and suddenly your writing sounds clean but lifeless. Something like GPT or AI. How to fix it? Protect your voice. Read your first drafts out loud. If it sounds like you, keep it. Editing should refine your voice, not bleach it. And this is one thing that I always make a point in my head, like always. Whenever I'm editing a book, I never wash out the author's voice. I never edit it so much that the author's voice gets completely washed off. So let's quickly recap the mistakes. Don't jump heads without warning. Keep your emotional distance consistent. Respect what your POV character can and can't know. Cut out filter words to stay immersive. Match your voice to your character. Protect your voice through revisions. These are simple fixes, but correcting them will make your writing feel confident and professional. So, that's it for today. Let me just stop sharing. Oh, I lost this thing. Okay. So today we explored one of the most essential and often invisible elements of storytelling. That is point of view and voice. We began by understanding what point of view really is, the perspective through which the reader experiences the story. Then we saw how POV shapes everything. What the reader knows, how close they feel, and how deeply they care. Then we went a layer deeper into narrative distance, that delicate control over how close we let the reader come to our character's mind. Then we learned how to zoom in for emotion and zoom out for clarity, distant and deep POVs. And finally, we explored voice, the thing that makes your writing unmistakably yours. We then learned the different types of voice, and then we finally covered the 6 most common POV and voice mistakes. If there's one thing that I want you to remember from today's session, it's this. Your story's magic doesn't only lie in what happens, but it also lies in who's telling it and how. POV is about seeing and voice is about feeling. And when you bring both into alignment, your story stops being a narrative and starts being an experience. So before you start your next project or chapter, take a minute and ask yourself 3 questions. Whose truth am I telling? What do I want the reader to feel? And through whose eyes will they see the best truth? The truth best in the best way. When you find those 3 answers, you've found not just your story's point of view, you've found its soul. Don't forget to download the free resource, the POV and Voice Workbook. It's filled with exercises that will help you identify your ideal POV, discover your narrative voice, and practice deep POV. You can find the link in the description and on my website, verbaticmedia.com. The workbook will go up probably by tomorrow evening. If you've been following the Writing Fundamentals series, I'd love to know what your biggest takeaway has been so far. Share it in the comments or in our WhatsApp group. I always love hearing from you. Remember, every story ever written began the same way, with someone deciding whose eyes would see it through. The more honestly you choose that lens and the more authentically you let your voice flow through it, the more unforgettable your story becomes. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was live 5 of our Writing Fundamentals series. I'll see you all in the next one, where we'll step into the next layer of storytelling craft. That is anatomy of a scene. Until then, keep writing, keep discovering your voice, and remember, stories don't just come from imagination, they come from perspective.